Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell hired in 2021. Next year, they will be entering year 4 of the respective positions. And I don't think we're going to see too much more out of Dan Campbell. I think we've seen as much of him as we're going to see. But the mystery in this equation is general manager Brad Holmes. He will be entering year 4 of what some of you will be calling a rebuild. I don't understand how you can call a team that is 9-3 and is 17 of their last 22 games. I don't know how you can 17-5 out of their last 22. How exactly is that a rebuild? In my opinion, the rebuild is over, and you are at this point putting the finishing touches on the rebuild, right? And that's what we need to see, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Now, Brad Holmes has kind of, when it comes to impact players, seems like he's favored the offense a little bit more with Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. I mean, those type of guys. But on defense, we've got a couple guys through the draft that are impact players, in my opinion. But I truly believe that 2024, the real Brad Holmes will come out. And what do I mean by that? This is the first year that his hands won't be tied when it comes to salary cap, contracts, so much dead cap. This is the first full year. And a lot of you in the comment section be like, well, when they got hired, they said it was 4 years. It was a 4-year turnaround. Well, we're entering year 4 next year. Now, of course, we still have 5 games this season and then the playoffs as well, however long that goes. But I wanted to put this before you. How important to you do you think next year is for Brad Holmes when it comes to defining his legacy with the Detroit Lions? For me, it's huge. It's huge. You know how I feel? There are zero excuses when it comes to Brad Holmes and getting this team in a position to compete, not for a division title, not for a playoff win, but for the Super Bowl. This team should be the next San Francisco 49ers. This team should be the next Philadelphia Eagles. And I will accept nothing less. Nothing less. You can do what you want, but I'm not going to accept anything less. And to me, this is when Brad Holmes, the true Brad Holmes, is going to come out. We've seen flashes of who we think Brad Holmes can be. But the true Brad Holmes is going to come out this offseason. Let me show you, according to Spot Track, what the Detroit Lions are projected to have in salary cap space in 2024. Now, this does include the 250. The salary cap will go up from 225 to 250, and a million I'm talking about. So here is where the Detroit Lions rank. They will rank 8th when it comes to salary cap availability at $57 million. And like I said, that is including the $25 million, the additional $25 million that they are going to get. Now, I saw, according to Spot Track, that the Detroit Lions have 39 players under contract. So 39 players have already been wrapped up: Jared Goff, Khalif Raymond, Alex Anzalone, so on and so forth. But here are the free agents that will be on the Detroit Lions after this year. So here are the free agents coming at the end of this season. We have Justin Jackson. Of course, he retired. We've got Romeo Okwara. We have Charles Harris, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, Halapoulivaati Vaitai, Josh Reynolds. That is going to be Teddy Bridgewater. We've got Will Harris, Jason Kabinda, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Nate Sudfeld, Matt Nelson. We have Julian Okwara, Jonah Jackson, Craig Reynolds, St. Zylstra, Brock Wright, Benito Jones, Anthony Pittman, Scott Daly, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Khalil Dorsey, Riley Patterson, Jerry Jacobs, and your favorite, James the Problem Houston. Now, next year, those guys will no longer be part of this team. Brad Holmes, we know the first thing he's going to do is bring back people that he thinks fits on this team. Who could that be out of this list? To be honest with you, I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what he's going to do. Are we going to try to bring C.J. Gardner-Johnson back? I could see a handful of people coming back on this team. A handful of people. I don't know how many free agents that is. I did not count. But after he signs those people, whoever he decides, the biggest 2 names that probably stand out to me, well, I got 3. I got C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I have Josh Reynolds, and it was one more as well. Probably Jerry Jacobs. And James Houston, the Detroit Lions he's a restricted free agent or something like that. Exclusive rights free agent is what he is. So basically, the Lions have top priority for him. So I don't think he's going to go anywhere unless they trade him or something like that. But I think the biggest 3 free agents are probably Jerry Jacobs, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Jonah Jackson. What will happen with the rest? So let's say we bring those guys back and we got that $57 million, the most money he's had to work with on the team. Now, there's no doubt about it that we're going to have to continue to draft, right? But free agency comes before the draft. And when that period opens, the Lions are probably going to sign a ton of their own players, right? But outside of the team, who are they? Who could they possibly go after? What kind of game changer could they bring? Because let's be honest, y'all, it's time. Enough with the Bruce Irvins. Enough with the Quentin Bohannas. It's time to bring some dogs, some monsters on our team, right? And here are guys that are going to be available. We're going to take a look at 2 positions. Guys that are going to be available at the defensive tackle position. Chris Jones, Christian Watkins. We got a lot of guys. Darius Leonard, J.D. Reader. Okay, cool. Those guys are cool. Chris Jones is probably going to be the most sought after free agent. But if we go to edge, which is where my focus is, we've got Brian Burns, Josh Allen, Chase Young, Daniil Hunter, Bryce Huff, Jonathan Greenyard, DJ Wonham, Jadeveon Clowney, and now you're getting at the bottom. AJ Epinesa, I remember when he was drafted, and Andrew Van Ginkel. Out of this list, this is who I want on this team. Josh Allen. We already went over his salary cap projections or what he is projected to get, and he's going to command quite a bit of money. Right now, him and Amon-Ra St. Brown will be making the same amount of money if it goes Spot Track's way. Next year, in my opinion, is going to be a definitive year for Brad Holmes. Not a make or break year. I think he's a great general manager who has his flaws. And I think some of his flaws is shopping in the basement, shopping at the dollar store, shopping at Dollar Tree. I think that is a flaw, but we're going to see if I'm wrong. Okay. I think that he waits until the last minute and then he goes and gets what he can on a bargain. That's what I think. All right. But again, I'm going to call it like I see it. And I'm also going to give him a wee bit of slack. And that slack is, I understand where he's coming from. See, I was here. He wasn't. I was part of this team. He wasn't. He might know the inner workings of the team. He might know the salary cap implications. But I was here during Matt Patricia. I was here when he brought in 18 expatriates. I was here when he traded for Everson Griffin in the middle of the season. I was here when he drafted Jeff Okudah. So I was here. I know what this team, who's on this team, and I know what he had to do. I know what he had to do, and I know what he can do. And right now, it's obvious that this team needs some dogs on this defense, specifically the defensive line. And then he's going to probably have to address the secondary because Emmanuel Mosley is done. And if he's not going to do it in the draft, he needs to do it in free agency. And that brings me to a second thing. Our 2 most needed positions on defense is first and foremost defensive edge, defensive end. Secondary is a need as well. If we look at a couple of guys, okay, that will be available for 2024. Jalen Johnson, L'Jarius Sneed, Kendall Fuller, a couple of these guys we were talking about at the trade deadline. Okay, look at there, Jeff Okudah. Now, personally, I can see this guy, Jalen Johnson, even though he dropped a couple interceptions playing us. Hey, appreciate that, bruh. I can see him being part of this team. So what I want to see, we know Brad Holmes can draft, right? We know he can draft relatively well. I want to see him be aggressive. You can call it what you want. You can call it breaking the team. You can call it selling the farm. You can call it whatever you want. I call it being aggressive. We are one of the only teams that are in competition, like legitimate competition, to make the Super Bowl, to go on the playoff run, who didn't make a move at the trade deadline. Okay, we didn't need Shaq Leonard. Well, the Eagles did, and they got him. I know a guy, the linebacker, just got hurt. San Francisco, we already know what they do, and they beat up on the Eagles yesterday. Their defense is absolutely scary. That's what I want. I don't mind if it takes another 2 or 3 years to get there. I don't mind that as long as we get there, because at the end of the day, that's how you're going to win games. Do you need a healthy quarterback? Do you not need to be on your emergency quarterback? Absolutely. But we've been building through the draft. How much more are you going to continue to build through the draft? Eventually, you gotta go outside the draft. And again, I don't know if I'm confusing people. Maybe I just talk so much that people they lose what I'm trying to say in thought. Okay. But as I've said before, and I will continue to say, if you have a good team, that means you have good players. If you have good players, you're going to have to pay those good players. Whether they're good or great, they're going to require some money. St. Brown is projected to get upwards of $20 million. We're talking about $26 million. And if I'm not mistaken, that's right around the same amount that defensive end Josh Allen will get. If you have good players, for your team to stay good, you need to pay them. So whether you draft them and then or get them in free agency, you're going to have to pay them. Now, you might be like, well, as soon as it's time to pay them, time to trade them or cut them, whatever the situation. Well, let me see you keep a good team. Joe Burrow just got paid. Jamar Chase just got paid. And it ain't even Friday night. These good players get paid. Tyreek Hill got paid. That's how you keep a good team. Now, you have to be smart with it, but you have to open up the wallet eventually. Everybody does. Whether you're drafted or you're brought in free agency. I'm simply saying to Brad Holmes, you know what would make me happy this offseason? First and foremost, when it comes to people outside the team, get an edge rusher, be aggressive at free agency, and make your number one target a edge rusher. And then after that, I'm happy. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think Brad Holmes is going to do next year? The most cap space, the most he's had in his time as a Detroit Lions general manager? Let me know. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions.